You have to press really hard. Press it hard. All right, the March 19th, 2025 meeting of the Sales Tax Citizens Oversight Committee is called to order. And we have a roll call.
Committee member Greenbaum. Here. Committee member McBride.
Here.
Committee member Spursum.
Here.
Committee member Langeveld. Here. And Chair Gerbosi.
Here. Okay, the first item on our agenda is for Madeline to introduce herself. Please.
Hi, I'm Madeline Langeveld. I'm happy to be joining you on this committee. My husband and I and our kids have been residents of Corte, Madera since 2013. Before that, we were in Mill Valley. And just about myself, I was born and I grew up in the Philippines, had my undergraduate degree in the Philippines, moved to the States for my graduate school work, where I met my husband, got married, and we lived all over the world. We have two children. We have a daughter who lives in LA and a son who's a policeman at the College of Marin. So we are very local now. And I happened into this role because I met Eli Beckman at the opening of this building.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'd like to get more involved in the town because I don't know anything about Corte Madera. And he emailed Lorena, or Lorena's not here, and said, we have this person who apparently has a financial background, and maybe you can hook her up with Karen Bergosi. And so Karen and I had a chat, and here I am.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
To have you aboard. So
Thank you.
forward to working with you.
All right. The next item on our agenda is open time for public comment for any item that is not on our agenda. Do we have any hands raised? Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is our general business. The first item on our agenda under 4A is to review and discuss the fiscal year 2023-24 sales tax revenue and expenditures and consideration and possible approval for the proposed annual report for 2023 to 2024.
Great.
Go.
Thank you, Chair Gerbosi. Committee members, Adam Wolf, town manager for the town. I am not joined today, as you might see and be obvious, by Daria Carrillo, who has separated from the town. She has retired from CalPERS and moved on to nonprofit work since our last meeting. So we are currently, I think we publicly acknowledged all her work and effort with the town council, but also she just wanted to extend her appreciation of the committee and their support over the last several years. We are currently in recruiting for a new finance director. And so that is well underway and good progress is being made there. But we are still in close contact with Daria, and she's been obviously a great asset to the town and support in sort of getting this committee off the ground and working with this committee on the sales tax measure. So just wanted to inform you of that, but I have a great replacement for you today. I think relevant subject matter expert here, RJ Suko, our Public Works Director, can help answer questions about perhaps some of the expenditures that we'll be talking about today. So with that out of the way,
Thank you.
I wanted to turn our attention to, and that should explain also why we're sort of looking at material that's dated January 11th. Daria, at least with respect to this fiscal year, obviously this is after the books were closed for 23-24, so it shouldn't, no bearing really on the report that you'll be reviewing today for that fiscal year. And so with that, I'd like to turn your attention to the staff report and attachment 1 to the staff report, which is really the summary and overview of the activity of the sales tax fund for fiscal year 23-24. And as it's summarized in that document, the sales tax fund beginning balance as of July 1st, 2023 was $8,438,394. Revenues over the course of fiscal year 23-24 were about $4.28 million. That includes a grant reimbursement of about $6,000. Revenues were down over 22 when compared to 22-23, fiscal year 22-23 by 3.3%. Expenditures were almost the same as the revenues for fiscal year 23-24 at $4.26 million, which was also a decrease of 2% over fiscal year 22-23. With that being said, the sales tax ending balance was $8,457,161,000, which was an ending balance about $20,000 more than the prior fiscal year. Of that approximately $8.5 million balance, as you know, by policy, $2.5 million of that is a reserve, leaving about $6 million essentially as the starting balance for the fiscal year 24-25. So that's a summary of the activity in the sales tax fund for 23-24. Speaking directly, and I think really the best summary is actually in attachment 4, which is the proposed annual report that this committee will be reviewing and essentially recommending for acceptance, and then ultimately reporting out to the town council on expenditures of the sales tax fund. So attachment 4 highlights sort of and summarizes again the purpose of the sales tax measure, talks a little bit about the history, speaks regarding the town council decision to prioritize certain expenditures for the sales tax measure, which was a general fund, but obviously did have policy direction attached to it. That's highlighted in the bulleted points in page 15 of the packet, but the first page of that report. And then breaks down essentially the expenditures into a variety of different categories. And so for fiscal year 23-24, the largest expenditure was related to flood control, about $2 million, which was approximately half of the total expenditures. That was really the expenditures related to the San Clemente pump station rehabilitation and pipeline repair, which is a major project, which, as you can see, also is expenses for that project continues on into this fiscal year as well. But has recently just actually been completed, and we can talk about that in the next agenda item. Additionally, there were funds used in 23-24 for the completion of town hall, including expenditures for paying rent for temporary offices, the debt service associated with the certificates of participation, which were used to finance the construction of this facility, which I think, as everybody knows, and you were here, so it was opened right at the beginning well, we moved in I think late May, around Memorial Day of 2024. And so we stopped paying rent, I think mid-June. We got everything out of our old facilities and got the trailer out of there right at the end of the fiscal year of 23-24. So looking at a full payments for those rental facilities for that year, which will not show up again going into 24-25. And additionally, just finishing some construction, the construction management services that we had associated with finishing construction of the town hall as well. That was about $1 million in total. And then you can see the breakdown into other project expenditures and capital project expenditures, about $700,000. And then on to other smaller dollar amounts, but not less important functions and uses of these funds, fire prevention, disaster preparedness. Again, there are some services some salaries that are paid for from the sales tax fund related to project management of construction and infrastructure projects. And recreation transferred to the recreation fund for some salaries associated with senior and youth program services. There are direct uses of the funds for senior programs and youth programs as outlined in the report, and a very small amount, just the last remaining piece for some consultant costs related to the housing element. That really is a overview of what's in the report and the expenditures of 23-24. So I'm happy to take any questions at this point related to the report. And
Well, then what I'd like to do then is just ask each member of the committee if they have any questions. So Jean, do you mind if I start with you?
Sure, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Chris, do you have anything?
This may be one you can't answer, but so there was a 3.3% decrease. Is that a concern going forward, a pattern of decreases, whether it's
Sure.
related to national, local, state politics, whatever?
yeah, well, we are seeing definitely a softening in our sales tax revenues year over year. Going forward, we're looking at relatively flat sales tax revenues. Maybe a 1% increase was our last projections. This particular decrease, though, is a little bit more unique. There were some corrections for one of our larger sales tax businesses. And so there was actually an overpayment made. Actually, there was an underpayment earlier and then a correction made. And so from the decreases primarily attributed to a higher sales tax revenue the prior year associated with that correction. And then the 3.3% reduction is associated with that. But I think it is a good point. We are expecting relatively, working with our sales tax consultants, seeing a relatively flat or slight increase in sales tax revenues going forward. I will say we're in a better place than a lot of other jurisdictions, at least thus far in terms of our projections. I think a lot of other places in the state are seeing more significant decreases in their expected revenues on sales tax.
Thank you.
Carl, do you have any questions?
I do not at this time.
Madeline? do you have-
Yeah, you mentioned sales tax consultant.
Yes.
What do they do?
Well, exactly what, to speak to Chris's question about, forecasting, a lot of what they do is forecasting revenue and sales tax revenue so that we can properly budget, and they advise us on that. They advise a lot of other cities as well. It's sort of a normal thing, but they're reading the economic indicators and understanding big picture, but also looking at our pool of businesses in our community and understanding how we might be impacted by headwinds potentially in the economy or vice versa. Maybe some good news.
Is the Macy's closure?
That's
big
looking
go-
forward, and we've been working, these are discussions we've had with the town council, but yes, those are things that we are looking at and planning for when we see a closure of a major retail business in town, we have to look ahead and make sure we're aware of it and then budgeting around those sorts of concerns. So,
So there are rumors circulating that there's going to be affordable housing there instead of Macy's. Is that?
well, there's no plans yet. I mean, there's certainly developers looking at it. I think from a sales tax standpoint, one of the things that we look at is ensuring that we still have a strong sales tax base. So it's one of the components of it. But you may be referring to a different project. There's an affordable housing project proposed at 240 Tamil Vista Boulevard. So, but yes, I mean, there's a variety of things could happen at that site that are being looked at will be looked at by the planning commission, town council, and other staff involved in those decisions. So,
Okay, a question that I had, basically piggybacking on Chris's question. So you're saying that basically then the amount that was reported in the previous year was inadvertently high.
to say it was a sort of a one-time, it was higher due to a one-time correction. Yes.
Yeah, so the variance, if things had been correct all along, the variance wouldn't have been 3.3%.
Would have been relatively, flat, if not a little bit higher. Yeah.
Okay. I have questions with regard to content in the report, but we're going to go over the report later. Right now, we're just going over numbers.
Oh, actually, no, this would be the time to go over the report as well. This is all in for item 4A. So we're looking for, the action would be to see what we have. Possible approval of the proposed annual report for fiscal year 23-24, which would then be presented to the town council. And
Okay. All righty. So in this second paragraph, in my past life, I was a proofreader and copy editor. So some of my input comes from that point of view.
Sure.
So the second sentence in the second paragraph, I think that it would make more sense to put the and fire prevention measures after for capital infrastructure improvements, put it at the end of that sentence. Or
That's fine. Yeah.
following, does that make sense? So that the purpose of the sales tax was to build town reserves, to provide funding for capital infrastructure improvements such as road, et cetera,
Mhm.
crossings, and fire prevention measures, period, and then continue. I have a note that last year we made a request to include percentages. I don't think we wanted percentages on each and every, but I think we were looking to have a percentage for the major headings.
Happy to do that and include that. Yeah, I'm sure we can.
And it might have been that ended up how it was on the completed report was probably. Does that make sense?
Well, just so I'm clear, so we want a percentage increase or decrease from, for example,
No,
infrastructure.
percent of the total,
Oh, percent of the
just to the total. So the total,
total expenditures.
the total expenditures is 4279, I think.
Right. Okay. So at the bottom of page 1 of the report, the town expended $4.26 million from this fund, a decrease of 2% compared with the previous year.
But then like on the following page where it says infrastructure capital projects, that the amount is not only 701,
It's the percentage,
852,
right?
but it's whatever percentage that is of the 4,260,000, I guess. It is.
Yes, that makes absolutely. So just, put that after that title, after the 701, some sort of
Okay.
increase or decrease percentage wise. That's
All righty. Then under infrastructure capital projects,
No, I don't think that's what You're asking for just a percentage of the total, not a decrease or increase,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, just a percentage of the total.
Understood.
Good
Yeah.
clarification. Thank you.
So like flood control would be
Flood control's
50%.
47%. Yeah, okay, gotcha.
And under the infrastructure capital projects, sidewalk replacement assistance, that was a little obtuse to me.
Okay. RJ, you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah,
Know what
we,
that means?
so we actually have a sidewalk pilot program, and there is a grant assistance, a contribution that the town will give to property owners that are fixing sidewalk in the public right of way. So it's tied to that item, and we can make sure to reference it better to the pilot program.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out who was assisting whom
Yeah.
and how.
Yep. Yeah, we'll update that.
The next item, undergrounding Redwood Highway. Are we undergrounding Redwood Highway?
Mhm.
Is this news?
Small amount, I'm not,
Um, so it's actually Redwood Avenue. But we have a undergrounding district that is really focused on responding to Christmas Tree Hills concerns over evacuation wildfire. So, and that being one of our most
So is it undergrounding utilities?
electrical underground.
Okay, so yeah, I thought you were undergrounding the highway. It should be interesting.
Big Dig, Corte Madera.
Good thing it didn't say undergrounding US 101. Okay, the last item. 2022 road rehabilitation project, previous year expenditures paid for by another fund. Could we say which other fund? Could we be a little less oblique there?
Yeah, we can clarify that and you know, just to give a little context and if there's a better way, let us know. But that project, for instance, was intended to be built in 2022. And then the water district came in and said, hey, actually, we'd like you to wait because we want to do our water lines first. And so we end up building a 2022 project in 2023. So if that was throwing anyone off.
But are the funds then water district funds?
It may,
Um,
maybe it may have been paid out of a grant fund. I'm not sure.
no, I think it's probably just a carryover from the previous fiscal year, but we'll clarify the language. It should have just, yeah, it should have just been a carryover.
Okay, so they weren't grant funds, they
No.
were just
Yeah, there's still Measure
previous-
F dollars that
previous year.
first budgeted in 2022. We only spent a portion
Mhm.
and the rest were saved.
Okay. Yeah, so some little bit of clarification there.
Sure.
Under debt service, are those amounts diminishing then the debt service principal? Or is it a fixed amount?
Debt service, no, that's going to be relatively consistent for the certificates of participation for the town hall.
Okay. So the principal is relatively fixed and the interest is diminishing?
Over time, I'd have to look at the schedule.
I'm just
I-
looking
I
at it
believe
from the
it's a
point of view of
fixed-
somebody that pays a mortgage.
It's a fixed rate.
It's a fixed over the payout of the term of it, of the debt service.
And it's, yeah,
Typical mortgage. The principal would be decreasing and the interest, or the interest would be decreasing and the principal
Sure.
would be increasing.
right. Yeah, that's correct. And so this is,
Structured that way?
it is structured very much like a typical home loan.
Okay.
It is a fixed rate. I think it's a 20-year term. It could be 30.
Mhm.
So that 255 is gonna remain consistent. So as years go on, it's gonna
Okay,
be
I
the
don't
same
expect
number. Yeah.
any change in how it's listed. I just had a question aside, is that over time, that's an amount that's going to diminish?
So the total would be.
Be the same.
It's fixed.
fixed, but it's just.
The total's fixed.
Yeah.
Okay. On the following page, I don't know what CMFA is. Under fire prevention.
Central Marin Fire
Central
Authority.
Marin.
Central Marin Fire Authority, sorry.
Okay. Oh. It's likely the council knows what that is, but
Yeah, that's the joint.
oh, duly noted. Right there, sorry. Excuse the ring. Okay. I think those are the questions that I had then on the report itself. Did anybody, given the way that I ran through that, have any other questions with comments with regard to the report?
Yeah, just real quick, to tag on to this. So there's a lot of sewer pipe replacement in the lateral program. Is that sewer lateral program assistance on here? I don't see that. There's a sewer lateral assistance program going on.
Yeah,
and
There
I
is,
don't
and-
see it this year.
Right, and that would be in our sanitary district.
Okay, that's not on the
budget.
budget. Okay. I would just ask you, you've got Corte Madera resurfacing, but then you have a line 2023 road resurfacing. Is that just broadly throughout the town?
So essentially, each year we package specific roads into a annual project, and occasionally we have multiple. So, you know, but it does go to council with a specific road list. I just don't have those in front of me right now.
Okay.
That's good.
Madeline, did you have any other questions with regard to the report? Okay. I think that being said, then are we at the point where we should?
I think, so just to summarize, I think we're going to add the percentages after each of those major categories in terms of the total percentage of total expenditures. We will clarify the undergrounding Redwood Highway, change that to Avenue. And then we will just internally clarify if there's needs to be any change to identify, I'll change the language of the last bullet under infrastructure capital projects,
Then also the sidewalk program.
sidewalk program. And then in the second paragraph, we also will make that just reorganization of
The text.
of the text.
Great.
And if that captures it, I think then the committee could be in position to sort of move forward with a.
I move to accept the report as revised or to approve it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Committee Member Greenbaum,
Yes.
Committee Member Langeville, Committee Member McBride,
Yes.
Committee Member Spursum,
Yes.
Chair Gerbosi.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Does that complete everything then under 4A?
Yep.
Terrific. All right, moving on to 4B. Was I supposed to call for public comment?
Sorry, that was my fault. We do have Patty on the line and she has a hand raised. Just. Fine.
Thank you. There's no way to go, wait a minute, you forgot about us. So thank you for recognizing me. I really appreciate that in the report, it was separated out the youth from senior expenses. But I wanted to know, is there a proportional amount of the swim program money apportioned to seniors and to youth and a proportionate amount of the home match, or is it all considered a senior expense? Thank you.
I'm happy to answer that if that's.
Thank you. Yes.
So yeah, it is broken out, but the swim program, which I believe is approximately, I'll just say $50,000. There is a majority of that. I want to say like 2/3 for youth and about 1/3 for seniors. So it is broken out in that way. And that's highlighted in the details of the program the information here. And then as far as the home match is entirely a senior program. So all of those costs are associated with or expenditures are associated with the senior programs.
Thank you. Any other questions, Patty? Hearing none.
We didn't have any additional public comment and we already did a vote on the motion that was made. So I think we can continue on to item 4B.
All right, 4B. So 4B, review and discussion of the fiscal year 2024, 2025 sales tax revenue and expenditures as of January 11th. So that's about halfway through the fiscal year, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And so, yeah, most importantly, this is really just through January 11th is when Daria had pulled this report on sales tax. So, as I mentioned, we had about a opening balance in fiscal year 24-25 of about 8.47 million. So far, as of January 11th, about 1.45 million has been of revenue was received, and expenditures total about 2.36 million. I will say that we are on track. That we didn't see any. This is just more of a cash flow in terms of when revenue was received in the year. We're not expecting to be below our projections in terms of sales tax revenue this year.
Mhm.
So it's just showing that as of that date, that's sort of where we are in terms of the revenue versus expenditures. And without, this is really an opportunity with this item just to briefly chat about any of the current fiscal year expenditures that are projected from the sales tax fund. And if you have any questions about any of the projects, RJ's here, can help explain some of those if need be, but there is a attachment 2 sort of has a list of a lot of the specific projects where there's funds budgeted. I will say one of the other things that's in this fiscal year, that's one of the major expenditures, which was in last year's budget as well, but didn't get expended, was the $2.4 million for the Caltrans Tamalpais overcrossing project, which really was an effort to leverage and sort of put the towns, some of the towns' funding toward a much better design for a multimodal connection between the east and west sides of town. So Caltrans has made significant progress in the design. They're about 65% design. And it now includes, as a result of sort of leveraging those funds, it went from, I think, a $28 million budget to now $45 million project. But that was actually as a result of the town sort of, in the town council, I should say, recommending that Caltrans really think about an alternative that would provide this connection and a better path. So it's now a 15-foot wide bike and ped facility that's going to be extended off the north side of the overcrossing, exclusively for bikes and peds, separated from traffic, which will be a huge improvement. So I think it was hasn't been expended yet, but I just want to make that known that that's.
And it was actually, I think, closer to 15 million was their preferred project, and then it's now in the 40s million.
So yeah, it goes to, and yeah, I'm happy to let Councilmember Ravazio, who's very much involved in sort of the early, what call them, negotiations or just sort of push for Caltrans to reconsider a more significant project that was more beneficial to the town and some of the long-term planning goals that the town has had over the years. So with that, if you want to add to that, yeah.
Thank you. Hi, Pat Ravazio. I'm actually mayor right now, and just mayor for a moment in Corte Madera, enjoying it very much. And I'm just the liaison to this committee, so I'm just here to listen. But I would love to tell you how that pedestrian overcrossing he just mentioned fits in with this whole idea of how do we stem what our natural losses in retail sales activity, because this is going to be a beautiful new connection between the two shopping malls. So the whole thing is designed to facilitate pedestrian and bicycle and beauty between those two things. I can't take questions. I just want to make one other comment. It came about through serendipity because the man who was the head designer for Skidmore, Owings and Merrill architectural firm happened to live over in Madera del Presidio and had a son who wanted to ride his bicycle over the Tamalpais overcrossing to get to Hall Middle School. And he was deathly afraid. And so when I happened to meet him and told him how I was pushing to get us a better, safer pedestrian overcrossing, he volunteered his firm. And he has been working pro bono for the town of Corte Madera for, I looked it up, 9 years now. And compared to other projects at Caltrans, that was a speeding train bullet, that project, that it only took 7 years from our first presentation to they came back. And now it looks like it might actually happen. But it's really good news because it helps us make that brand of Corte Madera as the shopping experience in Marin really come to life. And Adam is doing an amazing job working with, again, some not necessarily pro bono anymore, but we're getting help making sure it's beautiful. You know, making sure they do nice finishes and that it's not your normal boring old Caltrans thing. It was inspired by the New York City High Line, sort of a park in the air. If you can. So I won't go on, but I just wanted to say it's a really exciting time for that. And Adam has
Yeah, and
done a
we'll-
masterful job of
Well-
somehow keeping it on the books despite everything falling off the books. You know, there's lots of projects that are dying right now because of the fires and other things. And somehow we've kept this one going. So good job.
And there'll be more information, I think, once we have a little bit better handle on the design specifics, bringing it, you know, we'll have a presentation for the town council. And so, but I just wanted to note that's a big line item out of this dollar amount that you're seeing from a sales tax in the sales tax
So
fund.
going back then to the sales tax component, the 2.4 million
Yes,
you called out. So that's in,
that's budget. Yes,
that-
that's in the current 24-25 fiscal year budget
okay.
as a line item for an expenditure. In addition to all the other capital improvement projects and other projects that
So
are
that's one of the,
outlined in attachment to the,
one of the projects.
yeah, I think it's listed, yeah, it's in engineering, public works administration on the top of page 22 of the packet. You'll see several, right below, actually, one of the projects that
there
I
it
know
is.
this committee has been very, and committee member Greenbaum as you know, obviously very much aware of, but one of the other big expenditures, obviously this year is the Casa Buena Complete Streets project.
Okay.
Which is using sales tax fund.
Does anybody,
May I make a
Sure.
quick comment? I really welcome that project because my husband and I walk all the time from Meadow Creek to Town Center, and crossing over that bridge
Mhm.
is awful. So we have to walk all the way to the north side and go on the highway. And, but wonderful.
We'll use you as a testimonial when we get that.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
It's a 1955 experience out there. That's when it was built,
Yeah.
right? In the
58
50s, I
or
think.
something.
Right, and the kind of preferred initial project by Caltrans was really just to do some ADA and seismic retrofit and have it be the same facility for another 30+ years. So that's where we said, hey, no, it's not good enough.
And of
So-
course, you have the transit access and people running across the free on ramps and stuff like that. So a lot, I will say, construction's going to be a challenge for folks. So just we'll obviously have more on that when that happens, but obviously that's part of it. But ultimately to this much better future that we're all hoping for. So thanks.
okay. Well, then going basically then through our committee, does anybody have any other, did you have something, Carl?
Yeah, just a quick question here on page 20 of the document. Infrastructure Town Hall, $56. Is there a decimal missing there? Dollars?
It must have been like last remaining check that
Years or
somebody was
something?
sounding for us. No, I'm serious. No, there's not a. That's
Okay,
not-
just curious.
What do you, what did you ask about?
So on page 20, there's a line item that says $56.
Must have shorted the,
Oh.
Maybe we bought an extra sign
No,
or
it's a-
something.
it's for temporary offices.
I did-
There wasn't.
I think we shorted
That's
the
like a half a
RJ
sign.
trailer guy. I don't know.
I have a couple of questions too.
Yes, Jean?
Okay, so under senior programs, the new budget is 265,000. Is that, are we getting our center?
Well, at the time, certainly, that was, we wanted to put it in the projections for this year as an expenditure for senior programming. Another council member Ravazio and council member Casisa, myself and the council as a whole has been very supportive, but we've been working hard over the last year to try to make that happen. It was in anticipation it might have happened earlier in the year, still working on it, but we're hoping for some good news soon that we can share. But certainly will, if it's not expended this year, it will carry,
But that's what it was for.
that's what it was for.
Okay. Also, I just want to know the difference between Casa Buena improvement and Casa Buena complete streets is,
Can you,
page
It,
22 on the top of the page.
okay, I see what you're
I
talking
think
about.
it's really actually just a, it should be frankly combined into one. I mean, the
So
big.
it's the same
it should-
project.
Yes, it is. It is.
Which, thank you very much. The
And oftentimes, it's possible it also could be related to like design or construction management where, but not the construction, but
I
it's,
see.
it's overall the same project. Yeah.
Well, I walked the new sidewalk here, so I'm really loving it. So,
I see someone walking it every day. It's great.
yeah, it's a lot more people are walking it.
Jean, can you tell me where the earlier item that you mentioned?
It's on the prior page under senior programs. The new budget was, it went from 75 to 265. Under senior programs. In the middle, kind of.
Got it. Thank you.
And then let me see if I have anything else highlighted here. So under debt service principal, is that paid like in the second half of the year or something? Is that why that's zero
Yeah.
right now?
That's correct.
Really?
Okay, so that's all I have
I
on
should
that.
say, I'm assuming the same thing. I don't know exactly when that is due. I don't have received the bills myself right now on that. So, but I'm assuming hasn't been required to be paid
It's not a
as of,
monthly.
as of January 11th.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Chris, did you have anything further? Carl, did you have anything additional? And Madeline? Thank you. So I think that concludes our review of 4B. And should I call for public comment?
Yes, and it doesn't look like like Patty has a hand raised and we don't have any emailed public comment for this item either.
Thank you. Okay, that being the case, then I guess we'll move on to item 4C. Review and discussion of the 5-year, that's the document on page 30. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And this is not an action item either. It's really
It's
just
just-
informational only. And so it's, we basically are, as part of this report and how it's evolved, I think, or this meeting over the years is we take the look back and we talk about the prior year
Mhm.
sales tax expenditures. We look at the current year, and now this is really the look forward and maybe to, committee member Chris and McBride and talking about where our projections are moving forward. That upper part of this document, it's this one sheet that we're using to just sort of give you a picture of not only the expected sales tax revenues over the next 5 years, but also some of the expected expenditures on, and this is really showing mostly infrastructure here.
Mhm.
There are other obviously needed program costs that, for example, seniors and youth programs, the wildfire and prevention programs and all the other categories are not listed here, but at least wanted to get you a sense of the infrastructure work that is lining up over the next 4 or 5 years. And so you can see some of the significant costs. I tell RJ, I said, it's not like we're going to be lacking for places to spend the money. So, but if you have any questions, and RJ, please, if you want to add anything to this, because this is really
Yeah,
RJ's bailiwick here.
sure. Yeah. Just, we track this budget and kind of projecting projects moving forward in kind of different ways. This one, we've shown kind of the full project costs in the upper part of the table, but as you go down, you'll see a line item near the bottom that's grant funds. So, for example, there's up in the orange category, multimodal transportation, we have Paradise Drive Complete Streets, but we actually have $2 million in grant funds. So rather than, for this particular format, rather than put 500,000, we've put 2.5, but then credited the grant funds back. So just something to keep in mind. I think it does a better job of showing the scale of the project, and then also showing, how we're leveraging funds and getting outside financial resources. So, and otherwise, it's just broken up into categories. Multimodal, flood control, parks and rec, and climate adaptation. And a lot of this is based on recent work done on various master plans. So storm drain master plan, parks and rec master plan. And separately, we have one for sanitary district as well. And yeah, this is, a working draft. It's, we update it, multiple times a year, but, as of this moment, this is the latest and greatest. So
Is this something that we've seen in the past?
We did bring, I think last year was the first year we did a sort of 5-year look ahead. It wasn't in this format.
Okay.
But it was much more general, but this is a little bit more detailed and broken down in this way.
Well, I think when we first started, we were doing projections,
Okay.
5-year projections, and then it stopped. And I think we discussed, we would really like to see
Bring it
that. So
back.
I'm really happy to see this in
and I
today's
think
meeting.
if we were doing it, in several years before, we were kind of generically saying, okay, we're going to spend $1.5 million on roads each year, but maybe not know exactly where. And same thing, we're going to put $1 million for flood control, but we don't know where. But now that we have these kind of more detailed master plan documents, we can actually project out with more specificity.
Is it possible structurally to include 24-25 since 24-25 is kind of half in the past and half in the future? Or is that kind of defy the,
So this was generated update or generator in the fall, really to help council understand what leftover or discretionary funds might be available for like parks and rec projects and stuff.
Mhm.
So for that reason, we didn't look backwards. It was kind of helping to answer that at that time. I'm sure accounting could tally the numbers, but it probably would just be an exercise, and I think I'm pretty short staffed right now.
Yeah, no, and I think this, and really this particular document is really for the look ahead. It's for the
Okay,
projection. So
all
I'd
right.
like to keep it focused on the future
And
rather than.
24 is gonna be its own anomaly because a lot of our town hall funds were
Okay.
there, so I would expect it to not be very
Yep.
telling. It would
Yeah.
probably be double.
not predictive?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right, anybody have any other questions with regard to, yes, Carl?
Yeah, just quickly here, I like seeing this, but I don't know what it means. Madera Gardens Complete Streets. What does that mean?
Yes, so currently, on the sanitary district side, we're doing all of the sewer pipelines in the neighborhoods. And this summer, we're planning to resurface those streets as well. And then there'll also be, bulb outs and AD curb ramps and other multimodal surface improvements.
So it'd be grinding the streets down, I suppose.
A lot of them, yeah.
Good to hear. The other thing, just, I don't see it on here, but since I live over there, the high canal between Lakeside and the high school is falling apart. The berms are crashing down into the thing, and it's looking worse and worse. I don't know if that's
Right. Yeah, we're aware of a few slip outs this year. We did a handful of repairs in 2018.
Yeah.
The, I don't know, unfortunate reality of it is it's a tremendous amount of money and work because of the environmental process to go and repair 3 versus 12. So, and we've looked at them. Currently, they aren't impacting the functionality of High Canal, but we'll monitor it. But it would be more cost effective to wait until we have a few more to then attack a larger project, because it's probably going to be, last time it cost us about $400,000 to do 3 or 4 repair areas. And if you went and did 12, you're gonna get much more economy scale, because you have to set up a cofferdam, you have to do the whole environmental compliance, you have to do a fish capturing, this whole, significant effort.
So there's some economies of scale.
Yeah, yeah. So we will probably wait till we have, obviously if severity of them gets worse and it starts really eroding and causing damage to, private property or something, then we're gonna jump in. But right now, I don't believe it's quite doing that.
And then I will say, there is in the general CIP category, there is projections for things. There's small projects. There's other things that come up during the course of a year that need to get handled. And so that about $1 million that you see in the general CIP is sort of a non-specified line item. But if there was a need to go in, for example, and do a repair there, that's essentially what's.
And on Madera Gardens, we are tentatively planning a public workshop. I think it's April 9th, a Wednesday. And we'll be noticing that several weeks before, but would love for, people to participate, especially those that, use that area for, access and also live in that area. So.
Yeah, I guess my concern is the Band-Aid approach is really not going to solve the problem. And on the west side of the canal, it's got the rocks all the way to boulders. Then it kind of stops at the bridge. And even one of the repairs collapsed on the south side of the bridge. So it's just, I guess I'd like to see a project that says, we're going to fix this whole thing at once. That's the most critical flood pinch in the entire flat over there is that canal can't flow, then no need to have the pumps there. So.
Yeah. And I don't have the exact answer, but I will just say it's a challenging conversation with regulatory agencies to be extra proactive, because they really don't want you in there at all. And obviously if something has visually failed, it's like, okay, we got to get in there. But for us to say, oh, we're just gonna do 1,000 feet, they're gonna push back pretty hard.
And so when our neighborhood floods, they'll be okay with that?
Well, if we can show that it's actually an impact to, health and human safety, then absolutely. But from everything, we just did our storm drain master plan, that was not flagged as an issue.
It just, every time it happens, it just keeps filling up the canal to where it just, the dirt level's rising every time those things happen. So. Anyway.
we had it drone surveyed, and everything is modeled and it's expected to perform as we intend.
Madeline?
Good.
So going back to the Tamalpais overcrossing project, who's going to pay for that? Because I don't see it in this 5-year budget.
Yeah, so it's a Caltrans project. So the vast majority, right now, the funding is about $40 million from the state. The town has pledged, and it hasn't actually sent the money, but it's $3 million from the town total. And then TAM, Transportation Authority of Marin, also is pitching in about 1.1 million. So there's still, I think, but the vast majority is a state project. They're paying it for it. So the town is expected to do a one-time contribution, and then from there on out, it would be a state project.
Yeah, and I think,
It will be out of sales tax revenues.
The 2.4 would be, and then we also have 600,000 out of the town capital projects fund.
Okay.
So
Got it.
yeah, and then
That
I
answer your
think
question?
of the 40-something million, about 15 or so million comes from the Federal Investment Infrastructure Act. And then the balance, the bulk of it comes from the state.
Taxpayers.
Has the Trump administration made a difference in how we are going to be getting all this funding?
So there's been at least one attempt to take back funds that were set aside and approved by Congress. And that was, I think, a Supreme Court ruled that that's not legal. So far, he hasn't been able to go backwards, but certainly, I would suspect changes moving forward for funds that haven't been approved by Congress already.
So
fingers.
to follow up on that, so in the coming years, in a couple of these years, we're talking about $8.5 million projected just on what's on here. And grants of 3 million to offset that. And if these grants going forward are no longer going to be available, especially from the federal government. And
Yeah.
most of that is this pump station replacement. So I imagine that's like really
It's actually
important.
So grants are not all federal. Some of them are state and some of them for other districts, right?
So speaking specifically to that, so Shorebird Marsh Pump Station replacement, that was our #1 flood control pump station prioritized by our master plan. We don't expect a lot of grant funds, if at all, for that one. It's, we'll certainly try, but it's unlikely. Where we are anticipating some grant funds is for a levee project along Marina Village that actually keeps the bay waters from flooding out 101 like they have in the early 80s.
Mhm.
And so we did get $1 million in funds for design. So that's scheduled to hopefully start and kick off this summer. And once we have it further developed, we'll apply for the next round. If we don't have the funds, then it could slide in terms of years. It may not move forward in 28, 29 like we have here. But it doesn't represent us being in a position where now we don't have $3 million a year in funds that we are anticipating. But we do think even if, and one of the current fund sources is FEMA, even if we couldn't tap into FEMA fund sources for construction, we believe that, it's a regional project, right? 72,000 people a day go on Highway 101. So, and this directly impacts them. So we've been lobbying, the county-wide jurisdictions, Transportation Authority Marin, and also even Caltrans to say, hey, like, we're taking the lead, we're gonna do the work, but at some point, we all need to put together our resources and fund this thing.
Great. Thank you.
What's the general CIP? That's $990,000 a year.
So that's gonna be, we set aside you know, every year we're gonna have something come up, or that we know it's consistent, whether that's pavement repairs, you know, small ones around town that just come out of nowhere, or it could be traffic signal repairs. You know, we have signals that unfortunately get hit by cars like every other month. So
CIP stand for?
capital improvement program. So they're general, and we have that in our some of our more detailed spreadsheets, we can show that, but you know, we set aside $50,000 for traffic signals. We
It's a
set
kind
aside,
of a buffer.
it's just based on empirical spending, you know, you just, there's just, we know where there's gonna be potholes, we know there's gonna be slide repairs, there's gonna be traffic signal repairs, and then when you add up all those different categories, it represents about $990,000.
Okay. All righty. I think that concludes our review of 4C.
Public comment, you want to take,
Um,
Karen, you want to take public comment?
yes. We have any public comment?
Looks like Patty's gone. So we do not have any public comment.
Okay, thank you. Then the next item on our agenda is a review and approve the draft minutes. Does anybody have any question or corrections with regard to the minutes? We're not taking. Yes,
There we go. I may have asked this before. I don't know the answer. Why have we stopped including actual minutes in the document? All we have are links to a YouTube. Is there a legal reason for that, or?
No, it's more time. I'll let Lorena chime in, but it's efficiency and time, and it actually takes, there's a cost to it. And when you have the video recording, it's an obviously quotable source that doesn't need to be checked for accuracy.
That's correct. And this was a move that was approved by the town council back in July 7th, 2020. All of our advisory bodies follow this process. The sales tax committee hadn't moved towards that type of minute taking because we weren't putting the videos on the town's YouTube page. Now we have a transcription guide that exists because it has more of it self-generates the transcription, and then you can hear and see everything that was recorded, and that's a record that counts towards minutes. So that's
Good.
why we have action minutes.
That's fine. Thank you.
got it. So does anybody have any corrections with regard to the minutes? And for once, I don't either. I did read them. All right. So we need to have a motion, call a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Call for a vote?
Committee member Greenbaum,
Yes.
committee member Langeveld. Oh, committee member McBride,
Yes.
committee member Spursum,
Yes.
and Chair Gerbausi.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
All right,
Gonna adjourn us?
we're going to adjourn the meeting. Oh,
Thank you all. Appreciate your comments and feedback.